Perfect. Thank you, John. And thank you, Gabriella. Right, up next, we have got changes in Stadia hospitality to maximise revenue on Matchdays and beyond. So for this one, I'd like to welcome to the stage Jacob Regan, Client Manager at Dawnvale, John Berry, Managing Director at Dawnvale, John Williams, Founder and Director at SpaceInvader, and Denise Jones, Sales and Marketing Manager for Dawnvale, is going to moderate this one. So, onto the stage, please, guys. Over to you.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. We are here and we're going to share with you how the landscape of Stadia experiences and hospitality is changing. It's fascinating to see how quickly this sector is becoming one of the fastest growing revenue generators of all venues across the UK and globally. Let me ask you, how many of you recently tried to buy Taylor Swift tickets or an Oasis reunion? Sorry, I've gone to bits.
Is that right?
It's all right. Start again.
The Oasis reunion concerts, or even a season ticket of your favourite club. The demand is incredible, and it's clear to see how fans are willing to invest in unforgettable experiences. Today we are here to discuss with you how you can harness the willingness to spend by enhancing your hospitality offerings. We'll be sharing valuable insights and strategies to help you tackle the key challenges that clubs in this area are facing. We have three of the most challenges that we've come across when we've been talking to stadiums and arenas. And the three that we're going to cover are: we don't have any space in our stadium for more hospitality venues. We don't have time to build or refurbish a new hospitality suite. And how do we make it a success? So let's get started and explore how we can elevate the fan experience together. So let me introduce you to John Berry, the Managing Director of Dawnvale. We've got Jacob and Scott, Client Managers at Dawnvale, and John Williams of SpaceInvader. And together we are going to provide you with practical solutions and creative ideas. John Berry, what's one of the most recent and interesting spaces that we've unveiled within a club?
Good afternoon, everybody. This summer we was appointed by Birmingham City Football Club to carry out the hospitality refit of 8 luxury lounges. While doing the research and the feasibility studies on these lounges, we stumbled across a total unused area within the cop stand. This was currently being used to store earth left over from the previous structure development of the stand. When we found this area, we took this to the club, discussed it with the club, put a proposition to the club, which they accepted, to completely redevelop the area. This area now covers general, what's the word, sorry?
Admission.
That's right.
General admission.
Yeah, general admission. It's not for 350 guests. Within this now, sorry. So within this area now, with SpaceInvaders put a beautiful design together. We then pulled all the pieces together, and the fans have now got a brand new experience to expect every game.
Thank you, John. Do you want to just touch on the Gil Merrick as well?
The Gil Merrick was another interesting project. It was, I think, 20 boxes within that. And what we did with that, we completely knocked it through because there was unused facilities each game. And we've now turned that into another lounge for 200 guests to enjoy every game.
Thank you. John, do you want to just delve into the design behind these kind of areas?
Yes, I will. So when you talk about finding space, and the question was, quite a lot of you out there would say, well, I haven't got the space to do anything in my stadium or my event space. I think that's where we're really good at finding those spaces. And if you look at some of the images on the screen, one in particular, M-Gate, which we did for Manchester City Football Club, it's probably one of my favourites because when we actually walked on site, it was just a boring grey, dead concourse, and I think we've all experienced that. We've walked through a concourse and there's just nothing happening. And with this particular one, we just saw it was just clear that it was a perfect space for fans to give it back to fans, and it's exactly what we did. We just went and engaged with the Fans Association and said, look, we've identified this space. What do you think we should do with it? And we spoke to the club. You can see it on the screen now. We spoke to the club's marketing team and F&B team, and this is what we produced. You can see the before images on the left. And it was all about sort of framing those pitch views when you walk into the space and creating that sense of arrival and that excitement when you come in. But then, through the sort of engagement process, we understood, and we created this sort of this piazza space where people could come together, have a couple of beers with the mates and whatnot. And we even had a DJ booth in there as well. You're just sort of firing out tunes at the start and during and after the match. And it became home to 800 fans, where it was just nothing. It was just transient space. And so for me, that's one of our big success stories, I think. I think, there's technical challenges with spaces like that when you think about acoustics, fire, just M&E, etc. But if we work together and people that you trust, you can overcome those, and they're not issues anymore. And for me, I think that's one of our most successful examples of where you can really create something out of underutilized space.
Thank you. So now we're just going to move on to one more area, which is the reception at Manchester City. Jacob, do you want to talk us through that one?
Absolutely. Media reception is a great example at Manchester City as a dual-purpose space that we created. It's attached to the Jolie Stadium within their HQ building, and there was an increased demand for hot desks for staff, C&E and hospitality due to the club's ongoing success in both the academy and ladies game. With Space Invaders, we reimagined the area to fit the brief of a multi-use space. We focus on durable materials and bespoke joinery to provide flexibility and longevity within the area. This area now provides a significant increase in revenue for the club and is used on a daily basis.
Thank you. Let's not forget some of the smaller areas which are great revenue generators. The one when we recently did the extension in the Tunnel Club, creating extra seats. Do you want to just touch on that, John?
Yes, certainly. We recently undertook, within the season, just a 2-week project in the international break, where we added an extra 16 seats to Manchester City's top of the range Tunnel Club. So within that is very little outlay, under £200,000, and they've got the revenue back within that now within 6 months' time.
Thank you. We're going to move on now to time constraints for building new suites within the stadiums. So let's tackle this and the perception of not having enough space. Jacob, in your own words, do you want to just talk through the big feat that we've done in summer this year?
Yeah, so we had an introduction to Birmingham City. So following the introduction of their new ownership last summer, there was a great example of pushing the time constraints of a fast-track project. They are a League One club with a definite Premier League mentality. We were approached 5 weeks prior to the start of the 23-24 season with the ambition of delivering a new reception area and premium hospitality suite. We actually shook hands at the end of that initial week and began the rip-out the following Monday. This was very much a design and build project, and we delivered this with great success within a 4-week window.
Thank you. So John Williams, do you want to just cover off the fast track side of things, working together with the Dawnvale and your team?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, I think it was Robert that said it this morning. It was about team and it's about trust, and I think we trust each other. We're a design agency. You'll fit out, and there's two different worlds. But I think over the last few years, we've developed a trust. We understand how you work. You understand how we work, and we very quickly. Quite often, these projects they've got a time constraint on them. In between seasons, you just said 2 weeks for the one at the Tunnel Club. And quite often you've got to work quickly, and you've got to get a story out of the head of your client. You've got to develop, deep, meaningful concepts that resonate with the people that are going to actually use the space. You've got to get that into a CGI, play that back to the client, get them on board. But whilst all that's happening in the background, we're working together making sure that it actually works from an operational perspective, an MEP perspective, but actually from cost as well. So when we actually go and sit down in front of the client and show him the fantastic scheme that we've developed, we know it meets the budget, we know it's going to work, and it's right every time. And I think for me, that's what makes it special, really, and I think that's what makes our project so special and unique and successful every time.
Thank you. So we've talked about some of the bigger projects here with time constraints, and we tend to do those when it's out of season, which a lot of clubs have that mentality of that, when we've got the space, we can work. But as we've moved on with the different clubs, there's the smaller areas like kiosks and different things that we can do within the season and in between international games. Do you want to just touch on the kiosks that we've just delivered?
Yeah, currently we're working at another club in Manchester, quite a big club, Red One, where we're currently carrying out within the season 16 brand new concessions. This work was supposed to happen in the summer, but for whatever reason it didn't quite get to that stage. So we suggested, why don't we work the programme within your games, and then we'll facilitate everything what you need. Club agreed to that. We started on site after the first game of the season. We then pushed all these projects through, even to the stage where they had 2 new games dropped in, a European game and a League Cup game. But that doesn't change the handover date, that stays where it is. So we're still on site now, we're still carrying them jobs out as programme, even with the extra 2 games put in.
Thank you. So how do you make hospitality successful? So let's delve into some of the success stories of the venues that we've worked with and what goes behind making these areas a success. So John, in your own words, do you want to just go through?
Yeah, it's me again.
Connect with the fans.
So I think that there's kind of 3 things for me. Every venue, whether it's a football club, rugby, stadium, an events arena, whatever it is, I think everyone has its own unique story to tell. And just being at Croke today, we were at Aviva last night. In both those venues, the sort of events and facilities were talking about the community and the people around each stadium. And I think every sort of destination, if you like, has got a story that you need to be cognizant of, and it makes it contextual. So I think acknowledging that and making something that's going to resonate with the community is probably one of the first things I'd say. The second thing I'd say is that everybody using the space has their own different journey. And if I'm using the analogy of football again, people's football journeys are different. Who they supported as a kid, how they feel about as adults, their own children, who do they support now? Same with music venues that quite often start. I think it was like the chap from LA this morning, he was talking, the football club was built on an old stadium. Well, that might resonate with somebody else that's now using the new stadium. So I think understanding people's journeys and the demographics of those people is key. And then when we're talking about, general admission versus more sort of premium, you've got to make that relevant to each of those demographics. So, and I think the third thing is probably understanding hospitality design and what it takes to create warm, intimate space that works for your mates, it works for families being together. There's differences between each of how people use the space, and understand materiality, texture, lighting. They're all really key to sort of managing how people feel in those spaces and how they transition, from day to night. Match day, non-match days, winter, summer, they all have a very different effect on how people feel. So I think those were probably the three main success rates. And, we work on a lot of international hotels, we work on other restaurants. We've done multiple stadia with you guys. Bringing all this to bear on every project is key. Whatever you learn, just stuff we've learned today and yesterday will affect everything that we do now going forward. And it's just, it's an ever sort of changing cycle, if you like.
Thank you. And the process behind not just the design and what the fan desires or what the stadiums desire and what's happening at each arena, there's always that back of house to consider. And here today we've got Scott to discuss the operational side, back of house operations, and that's a big part of what Dawnvale are and where we came from over 35 years ago. We were a kitchen and bar provider. We then moved it forward and was working then to do the fit out, and we've engaged with lots of professionals over the years, and I've got a really good long existing relationships with clients and contractors and suppliers. So would you just like to touch on the operational side?
Yeah, so after ascertaining the space and then the timeline the client wants to work to, it's really key that we consider the operational design. There's a number of reasons for that. I'm sure there's people in this area, in this space today that's opened new spaces up and instantly come up with operational issues the minute they open. So we try to negate that with good planning. And our background, as Denise touches on, came from operations before we was into design and fit out. So we're in quite a unique position, myself and Jacob, because we get to speak to people daily and the heads of departments. So that might be a head of culinary, it could be head of bars, it could be an operations manager, general manager, executive head chef, who've all got their own individual specific briefing requirements, and they will give you their specific brief, and then we'll need to understand what the overall master plan brief is and facilitate that for the client. So understanding that, having an understanding of that is a very key thing, because if you don't, there is a lot of people in the industry that may not be able to bridge over both gaps. So I think it's quite key that we do that. So a big thing for us to understand when doing that is we also go to a lot of spaces where we retrospective alterations, which are obviously costing the client. They've already paid to fit out a space, but then we'll come along and we'll look at it and we'll instantly understand that it could be something to do with kit specifications, it could be to do with the spacings in between workstations, it could be contamination issues. We've recently worked with a lot of high-end or group restaurants, and they may have 20 to 50 different places within their estate that they need to maintain. So, for example, recently a contamination issue has happened, so we had to quickly put together a plan of how we were going to introduce these modifications into 50 restaurants for our client, and they needed to do it over a 3-week period. So there's quite a lot of logistics to deal with to understand that, but to our client that's massive. They've been given a deadline by EHO that they need to which are forever changing guidelines that we need to be obviously on board with for the benefit of our clients. So yeah, there was an example of that.
Thank you, Scott. So now moving on to showcasing results. There's a few jobs that we've done over the years, and there's one that particularly sticks with us, which is Accrington Stanley.
Yeah.
John, will you just touch on that for me, please?
Of course, yes. Everyone knows Accrington Stanley for whatever reason, the adverts, whatever you know it from. But it's quite a local club to us, so it means quite a lot to us as well. So we was approached off the club to develop the full stand. The construction of the stand was done by others. We was brought in to put the design and the full fit out on it. We successfully did that with Coley's 1968 and the Chairman's Lounge. These lounges, Accrington Stanley have gone from operating out of a porter cabin to 3 beautiful lounges. Unfortunately for Accrington Stanley, the following year they was relegated. We went back for a meeting with Dave Burgess, the MD, and the first thing he said to us, the lounges have provided stability for us. So even though we've been relegated, we're more sustainable than we've ever been. The place looks amazing. It's used 365 days a year, going from 18 to a full year. So the results financially, what it gives to the fans, the club, everything is just immense. So it's probably one of mine and the team's proudest achievements. Even though we do work with some mega clubs, no disrespect to Accrington Stanley, and they'll be the first to tell you, but it is an achievement, and it's bringing life to the town, not just the football club.
So, Jacob, how can you explain Birmingham City with what they've done so far and where we see them moving forward?
Yeah, so Birmingham City, not too dissimilar to Accrington Stanley. Following 30 years of minimal investment, we've actually just completed 8 hospitality suites, 3 floors of offices, 3 commercial kitchens, all associated corridors, walkways, bathrooms, and we carried out these works throughout a 12-week period. In just over 12 months, the ownership, which includes 1 unfortunate relegation, they are now almost doubling their revenue compared to previous years. In some circumstances, they will have a return on investment in approximately 12 to 18 months with a 10-year lifespan minimum proposed. This will ensure continued financial growth for the foreseeable future for the club.
Thank you. Scott, do you just want to touch on Manchester City? The final.
So I think John's touched on this example previously. So we've got various examples of standout, but this is a standout example. So the two-week turnaround time for the Tunnacliffe at Man City, which provided an additional 16 seats and a return on investment in 6 months. And this is an example that we see quite often, just an alteration to a general arrangement, to an addition of some seats has provided a big return on investment within a short period.
Thank you. Has anybody got anything else to say? No?
Yeah, I think so. One of a couple of other standout ones for me, and again, this is finding something from nothing really, and I think there's not always the opportunity to build new stadiums, and there's not all, there's a good sustainable story about better use of the space that you've got, and I think there's Manager's Corner and Hardwick for me. And I think they were basically storerooms for fencing, weren't they, at one point?
So yeah, I mean, the Hardwick suite was put to us from the club. We pretty much had to start straight away, didn't we? And it was an area that they stored fencing. So what they asked us to do was bring some heritage into the club from the surrounding areas, i.e. the Hardwick, is what the club used to be called. So the biggest challenge on that for us was the club wanted it building in 4 weeks. And in essence, this is a full pub within the stadium. I think most of you have probably been there. If you was at the tour last year, you'd have gone there. So, us being us, we said yes. And true to our words, we handed over on time. But the good thing about the Hardwick is you're almost not in a football stadium. You're in the pub. You're in the Rovers or whatever your local pub is. You're there. You're having a drink, and it's almost a bit of a surreal experience because you could walk in from the pub environment into a full stadium. So it is.
And that was 150 covers in there.
Yeah.
But having to find the space in the actual stadium for the seats as well.
The good thing with that is you weren't replacing seats, we was putting additional seats into the ground.
And then we did exactly the same thing in the opposite corner.
Once the Hardwick succeeded, the club was like, right, where else can we build? So we did exactly the same, opposite side of the corner. But this paid more of a respect to the general manager and managers before him. So obviously Manager's Corner, it's a bit more, it's not a local pub, it's more Mediterranean, that type thing, pizza, pasta. But it just gives the fans a full new game experience as well. I mean, it was that good, we even got our tickets in there. So it's a good match day experience.
Yeah, those would be my other two, I think.
I'm not a blue, by the way. It's a business thing. Just letting everyone know that.
Well, thank you all. I hope this gives you some inspiration and takes back some thinking when you get back to your arenas and stadiums, just to have a look round, see what can be achieved, and by all means come and speak to us throughout the day and tomorrow. We're here to answer any questions. Has anyone got any questions they want to ask us while we're here? Thank you.
John, you won't remember me. You did a job for me at the Liverpool Arena 12 years ago, but an office fit-out. 2 questions for you.
I do.
Okay. In contract terms, how do you manage the risk? Because you're putting yourselves in immensely risky positions. I'd love to know what contract you work into with the various clients.
We did a JCT contract, intermediate. We do JCT or D, intermediate or D&B. With the clients we've done these fast-track programs with, there has got to be an element of trust. So we was approached last year off Birmingham, not really knowing them because it was new ownership. We'd worked with Nick Smith before and Gary Cook. So it was like, listen, come in, do the job. Can you do it on time? Because at first we said no, because they wanted a £1.8 million project building in 4 weeks, which hadn't been designed. So I was like, no, it's too risky. Nick said, listen, don't worry about it. There's some cash. Get on with it. So that's what we did.
So JCT intermediate, not design and build.
Depends. With certain projects, we'll do intermediate or D&B. Depends which element of the project we're taking on.
Okay. And my second question, it's a bit more risky, this one. What's the sweet spot for cost per square metre for each of the values that you do for GA, PGA?
I'd say about, probably, depending on what we need to put in there, mechanical, finishes, what these guys specify. We've all worked with designers in this room before. Some can be up there, some are down there, so I'd probably go about £2,500 a metre.
Any more for any more? No? Thank you. That was really important. And sorry, Scott, I don't know how I missed you. Apologies for that. We won't forget you again now, but thank you. That was a really good panel. Everyone, come on, let's say thank you. That was really interesting. Thank you. Right, up next, it's me again. Sorry, you're going to be sick of the sight of me listening